going to be taking a look at this PRS P20 Tonare by PRS Guitars. This is made out of their Indonesian facility, made by Cortec actually. Here's a quick look. I wanted to share with you what the truss rod adjustment looks like. It's a little wrench that comes with it. Looks like it's I believe it's a 4 or 5 millimeter little wrench. And today we're going to be doing a fret polish as well as a board conditioning and a complete setup. There's a little bit of work going on here, but it'll be a lot of fun, and I hope that you enjoy this kind of stuff. The body is an all solid, well, all mahogany, solid top, laminated mahogany back and sides. We've got plastic bridge pins, but a bone, nut, and saddle. And there's something going on with that saddle, so I'm going to have to take a look at that in a little bit. And it appears like the setup is pretty good on the nut already. There's that little wrench we were talking about, and the tools of creation for today. I was thinking about putting on EJ16 strings, but I was also thinking about these Elixir NanoWebs 12 to 53s. And I saved my medium gauge strings for, well, my Taylor GS Minis. In any event, we're going to go with these Phosphor Bronze EJ16. I really like them. It's always fun to kind of rummage around the box to see what you've got. I'm trying to grab a couple of the extra little things we're going to need to polish right now. Guys, if you didn't know it, as we're setting this up, I am a wedding photographer here in Virginia Beach, serving the Hampton Roads and East Coast of the United States. And so just like with anything else, people are more than just what they do. And so I love guitars, so I set them up and play them. It's a lot of fun. So we've gone ahead and straightened the neck out. We're using that truss rod adjustment tool. It's as flat as a board can be. And by doing so, we actually have a pretty nice action at the first fret. We're right at 18 thousandths on the E and 16 thousandths on the high E. So that's really great for me. No fret buzz, string buzz. But look how short these tuning posts are. They're just a little over 1/4 of an inch, 6 millimeters maybe. They're very short. And the hole where the string goes through is very close to the ferrule, which means it's difficult to wrap down like you would normally want to do to get the proper break angle. So you end up with those ugly knots. Tuners are something that should probably be replaced on this guitar. There's also something else that the guitar showed up with, which is a missing piece right there. It looks like it's some kerfing from the inside. We're going to see if we can figure out where that's from. And I don't think that we're going to put it back, but if we can, we will. If it needs to go, it will. Getting ready to go ahead and cut the strings off, and I kind of want to share with you this process right here for me. I tuned down just a little bit, and then I know you guys love to see that. So here comes the tune down, and get a little bit of view of the workshop in the background. The workshop is actually my photography studio, which is the front great room of my home, and the office room. It's an L shape, and then here it goes. Cover your ears. It's loud. Yeah, I brought it down, but that's what it looks like. This is how I break them off. And those bridge pins back there, I pull out with just a little string puller. Pretty simple. It's actually on a little tuning machine that I use. It's cheap, but works. If you're used to any of my other videos where I talk about photography gear and cameras and just all kinds of stuff, then you'll notice some of that stuff in the background. Every once in a while, those pegs require a little bit of persuasion, so that's what we've got going on over here. Kind of yank them out some. And I don't really want any of those wires to fall down, the strings to fall down, so I kind of grab them and pull them out. That's why I don't cut them off any shorter. If you do, then you'll just have to fish them out through the inside of the body. This is giving you a pretty nice look on the inside there, but now I'm getting the ability to look at this bridge a little bit closer. And as you can see, there's actually, well, actually it's the saddle. As you can see, the saddle right here, maybe you can't see it, but it's got a little piece that's kind of chipped on the G string. I'm going to see if I can file that down and still use it. I've got to take it down a little bit. So we'll just address that when we're taking care of the saddle. And here's what the other end of the guitar looks like, and all those nasty knots from those short tuning pegs. It's almost as much fun as it looks like. Almost. So I've had a look around, and I found where that little piece of kerfing came from. It's actually coming from one of the supports from the lower bout on the underside of the top. As you can see, I've kind of got it positioned where it would be, but notice that little pencil mark right there? Yeah. That little pencil mark lines up with, can you see it? That little pencil mark right there? And those two things match together. They go together. So it looks like it went right there before it popped out. Now, this caused me to have a look around on the inside to make sure that the actual support was not, damaged in any kind of way. And it was just fine. So there you have it. Now we're going to have a look that we got the strings off. Let's check that bridge out. And you can see it really, this bridge is ebony. It's an ebony bridge and fingerboard, and it's in need of some oil. This guitar is a little over a year old, and it needs just a little TLC. This will be its first real maintenance that it's going through. And just to give you a look at that beautiful ebony fingerboard, even after a year of playing, it's still in really great condition, other than probably just needing some oil, a little cleanup. What I forgot to show you here was that I've already scribed a line using my marking gauge for how much I need to take off of the bottom of the saddle, just to make sure that I'll be able to get the proper action height at the 12th fret. I was sitting at 6/64 on the high E and 7/64 on the bass side, so I need to take that down quite a bit. And so I've gone ahead and made my preliminary adjustment right here, which is 1/16 of an inch. And I'm going to let this part play out pretty quickly because this is something I was always interested in when I was watching the awesome videos by T. Woodford Instruments, Woodford Guitars, a Canadian guy, and Driftwood Guitars. I think making the saddles and the nuts is really interesting. So I want you guys to see how this is kind of done, because I always wanted to see this part in its entirety at least once. Now here I'm not making one. This was the saddle that it came with, but you can see that it originally was not flat. That was something that was going on. So when I first took it out and began sanding it down, I noticed that it wasn't flat. So right now I'm just making it flat on the bottom. And I'm not using any kind of specialty equipment or gear. Notice I'm just very careful about how I'm holding the saddle and how I'm using the sandpaper. This is really aggressive sandpaper. It's 80 grit, but it does the job. I could have used 400 or something else, but I wanted it to sand through pretty quickly. Now I'm checking it for light and the different angles, and I'm seeing that it's nice and flat still. And I want to show you that I can still see my pencil line, so I haven't gone past it. Now, when I made this mark, I did not know that the saddle was not flat. Remember, I didn't find that out until just now. So when I looked at the saddle after recognizing it's not flat, one of my lines was the true line and one of the lines was not. One line was further away, had more material than the other line. So I erred on the side of caution and I simply sanded to the closest line. And this will turn out to be a really good idea in the future. Always err on the side of caution because it's easier to sand down than remake saddle from a blank. So here we're still going to that, and I'm still trying to just sneak up on that little line. And you can see I'm getting close, but I'm not quite there. And this is how it goes. It's sand a little, check. It's got an interesting smell of resin and bone here. So this is probably a bone saddle, just as PRS says, but made from bone dust, ground bones made into an epoxy blank with resin or something. So we are good to go. Yoink. So I do have a red light up there, so if you see some coloration, I just thought it would be cool. I'm fitting it to make sure that it's going to fit in just nice and having a look. You can see in the B area it's got a little bit of a chip too. Once again, I'll address that later. So now that we're here, I want to share with you the fret polishing. This is something that is so easy. You could do it. I charge $50 to polish the frets, but if you have a setup, it's $90, and I'll do the whole setup for you, including polishing the frets. But yeah, so kind of get off of my, that's what I'm charging $90 for a setup. In any event, so I'm using 1800 grit, 3600 grit, and 6000 grit sandpapers. And I use these little sanding sticks right here, and it makes it pretty simple. Now, I'm not trying to take any real material off the frets. They're in excellent shape, and they're not sharp. You can see the fretboard is bound, so it feels really good. So in this instance, I'm simply trying to bring them to a luster mirror polish because you can feel the grinding and tool marks on the frets. They're not smooth. And I won't make you sit through the entire 30 minutes that I went through this process right here, but it was 30 minutes of going through. And yes, that is one of my Robert Hand Photography business cards that I made into a template so that I could easily polish these frets. Can you tell I've done this a time or two? It just works real simply. I don't mind using the metal ones, I just couldn't find it, so I used this right here. So I'm going back and forth between all the different grits, and now it's time to go ahead and look at the fretboard. Now you'll notice I also, when I was polishing, I did not tape off the fretboard or the body of the guitar. In hindsight, I would probably do that in the future. I've done it before. I didn't do it this time. It didn't need it. I didn't touch the body. I was careful. There are no scratches on it from it, but it's always a good idea to keep your workspace clean. And this is an area where, looking back right now, I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I do that? I mean, I've got newspaper right around and tape. Anyways, I'm using Dunlop number 6 in order to get that lemon oil on the fretboard. I'm not one of these people that thinks you need to oil your fretboard all the time, but when it's dry like this one is and it's never had a conditioning, yeah, absolutely. And you can always condition it with a little bit of orange oil degreaser, like Goo Gone stuff if you want to, every once in a while when you change strings. But don't let it sit on your fretboard. There's got a lot of chemicals in that, but it will definitely degrease your board. In this instance, there's not a lot to degrease. I'm just adding the lemon oil from the Dunlop number 65. It's not sponsored. It just works well. I like how it smells. Now, what you're not going to see here is I'm going to let this sit in for about 30 minutes. So after we're all said and done, I'm going to let it sit in, and then I'm going to come back by and, wipe off the excess and polish it in. The Tonare guitar, the word Tonare is Italian for thunder. And later on, you're going to get to hear that at the end. This guitar, especially with those EJ16 strings, really booms. And I did a review on this guitar about 4 months ago, and it's amazing how much boomier it is, even with new strings. So here you can see this is after I've got all of the lemon oil on it, and I'm just letting it soak in. And of course, we're washing it off right now, or drying it off. The lemon oil, you don't want it to sit on there and pool. You just want the wood to take in what it's going to take. And you could let it sit longer if you wanted to, but it didn't look like it was taking in much more oil than what it already was. Inspecting the frets as I'm looking, just to make sure everything looks the way that I want it to. And yeah, the frets feel great, and you might even be able to see them gleam a little bit. I'm going to try to catch that for you, but even though I got all this photography equipment right here, I'm just recording this on a little handheld DJI Pocket 2. Let me know what you guys think of how it's doing. I think it's doing a great job for this right here. And it's nice to see that bridge with some moisture to it or some oil on it. It really rejuvenates the look and finish. So here we go. Look at that fretboard. It's so soft and smooth. Now you can kind of see some of those frets gleaming. Look at them right there. They're just shining, man. They're really nice, and they're just as smooth as you could ever imagine. So I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. It looks great. Now I want to give you a little closer look. As you go through here, you might be able to see some imperfections on the inlay work, specifically on the 5th fret. And there was even a chip over there by the 5th fret. So I could see where, even though the Samick facility is a pretty nice one, or the Corp facility is a pretty nice one over there in Indonesia, even though PRS does a great job with their quality control, there still is a couple of things. I mean, it's a $500 guitar, $400 guitar, depending on which version you've got. So it's time to go ahead and get the strings on it. I use the DJI, or the DJI. I use the DJI strings. Yeah, they're remote strings. No, I use the D'Addario. I really like these. The EJ16s are probably my favorite. I love the phosphor bronze, especially on a smaller guitar like this. It really brings out some of the brightness. And on a parlor guitar, that's one of the things that I like. It helps really project that brightness. And in this instance, I don't think they're too jangly, so it's nice. I think that has a lot to do with this guitar body shape as well. This parlor shape with this Tonare, it really impresses me. I got to tell you, I like it a lot. But so here we go. We're going to string it up, and I like to feel the bottom of the ball end to make sure that I'm not stuck on the end of the the fret peg, right? And I do that so that I can properly pull it to the bottom of the bridge plate underneath. and it just means that it won't get chewed up later on. Now, let's talk about this real quick. Because those tuning pegs are so short and the hole is so close to the ferrule, I can't get 3 or 4 wraps or 3 wraps. So usually I would have 2 peg heads or 2 tuning post lengths worth of distance. But in this case, I can't do that. So I just do 1. And then I've got to wrap it around the bottom because it's at the bottom, overlap the top, and then wrap it around and try to push it towards the bottom. This really is more of an issue with the wound strings, and one of the reasons that I don't use my other favorites, the elixirs, the coated elixir strings, is because they're so thick. It's even difficult in this particular copy of the guitar to get the bass strings, specifically the E and the A, through the hole on the tuning pegs, so I don't even really mess with it. Although I love the D'Addario EJ16 strings a lot, there is a lot of fret noise, string noise, when you slide up and down the strings. That's something that the Polywebs by Elixir really gets rid of. And although D'Addario has, that sound like that's all folks, right? Elmer Fudd. Although D'Addario happens to have a coated string as well, I don't think, in my opinion, that they get rid of the string noise from sliding just as much as the Elixirs. Yeah, that was me giving a thumbs down to those fret posts. But here we are. We're all stringed up now. We're finishing it off, and I'm just really excited about this guitar. I like it so much, and this guitar is an interesting one too, because when you think about what guitars should cost, right? Like this guitar, it's no secret that I bought this guitar on sale for just slightly less than $300 from Sweetwater. Not sponsored. I just got it from them, and for $300, I just don't think that you could get a better sounding guitar. It's excellent. Not for $300. This guitar sounds amazing. Would I pay $500 for it? I don't know. But $300, it was a steal. $400, maybe. So I'm going ahead and doing my initial tuning here. I've gone and tuned up a couple times, and this is finally coming through. And what I'm going to see is that intonation is almost spot on. So it's going to be time to do a little bit of work with that. But before I get to the intonation, I think to myself, you know, I snuck up on the shortest line, the most conservative line. I could probably get it a little bit better. So I went ahead and measured again. I'm not going to show it, but I measured again, and I reprofiled the bridge top or the saddle top and also sanded it down so that it'll fit real nicely. In the end, I ended up being 4/64ths on the treble and 5/64ths on the bass. Remember, we were at 6 and 7, coming down from 5 to 4. That's a pretty good improvement. And just as a comparison, I thought about putting in a new saddle altogether, but I decided not to. I also reprofiled those areas that I showed you which were broken. You might have seen the divot in the G area. I reprofiled that because I needed to move the string anyways in order to help intonate it. So I was able to do a little bit of work and kind of fortify and shore up those areas that had become chipped from this bone resin. I guess it's bone resin, like I said. Anyway, it goes in pretty easily. I just loosened the strings at the tuning machines by about 15 turns. That allows me to get in and underneath pretty easily like this. So here we go. Now it's time to go ahead and give our final setup and check just to make sure. We are right at 20 thousandths of 20 thousandths right there at the first fret, and 18 on the bottom fret at the E string, high E and low E. And then we're checking right now, just like I said before, we end up being 5/64ths on the bass and 4/64ths on the treble, which is great with no fret buzz, no high frets anywhere throughout the whole thing, and it's just a really great spot. You can hear some of that boominess come on in. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you for watching now. I'll let you hear a little bit of this as we finish off those final intonation tunings. And then coming up, you're going to get to hear a little bit of this thing just strumming out nice with some Aerosmith crying. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye for now.